Hello? Is this the HauntLine studio?
My name's Daniel. I'm 32 years old and I'm calling from Ohio. I've been listening to stories like these for a while now, but I never thought I'd actually have something worth sharing. I'm not really someone who believes in paranormal stuff. I work as an electrician and my life is pretty routine. Work during the day, dinner at home, weekends helping friends with house repairs or watching football. Nothing strange has ever really happened to me before. But something happened 2 months ago that I still can't explain. And honestly, I'm not sure I even want an explanation. This story is about my grandfather. His name was Walter. My grandpa was the kind of guy people respected the moment they met him. He was 84 years old, but you wouldn't think it looking at him. He still fixed things around the house, chopped his own firewood, and insisted on mowing his own lawn, even when my mom begged him to stop. He was a Korean War veteran, tough as nails, but also the calmest man I ever knew. He had this quiet way about him. He didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. He also never complained. Not about pain, not about getting old, not about anything. So when things started getting strange, none of us knew what to make of it. It started about 2 weeks before he died. One night, my mom invited him over for dinner. Just a normal family dinner, me, my mom, my sister, and grandpa. We were halfway through eating when he suddenly put his fork down and looked around the table like he was about to say something important. Then he said something that made everyone freeze. He said, "Tuesday, 9:47 at night." We all looked at him confused. My sister laughed and asked what he meant, and he said it again, "Tuesday, 9:47 p.m. That's when I go." At first we thought he was joking. My mom rolled her eyes and told him to stop talking like that. But Grandpa didn't laugh. He just took another bite of his food like he had said something completely normal. That was the first time, but it wasn't the last. Over the next several days, he kept saying the same thing. If someone visited him, he'd tell them. If he spoke to someone on the phone, he'd say it before hanging up. Even the mailman later told my mom that Grandpa had said something weird about not needing mail after Tuesday. The strange thing wasn't just what he said. It was how calm he was when he said it. He didn't sound scared. He didn't sound sad. He sounded certain, like someone who had already seen the ending of a movie. My mom tried to brush it off. She said maybe he was just getting old and confused. But Grandpa had always been sharp. His memory was better than most people half his age. Still, we tried not to think too much about it until the day I went to visit him. It was Sunday afternoon, 2 days before the Tuesday he kept talking about. I stopped by his house after work. Grandpa lived in the same small house he'd owned for nearly 50 years. It sat at the end of a quiet road with tall maple trees lining the driveway. The place always smelled like coffee and old wood. When I walked in, the TV was on in the living room playing an old Western. Grandpa loved those. He was sitting in his favorite chair, the one that faced the window. He looked over when I walked in and smiled. "Danny," he said. That's what he always called me. I asked him how he was doing. He shrugged and said, "Still here." We talked for a while about normal stuff, work, the weather, football, nothing strange. But after a few minutes, I noticed something. He kept glancing at the clock on the wall, not nervously, just checking it. Eventually, I asked him about the thing he had been telling everyone, about Tuesday. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Ever get a feeling like you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time?" I didn't really know how to answer that. He continued, "Like when you're late for something important, your whole body knows you're supposed to be somewhere." I nodded slowly. "Well," he said, "that's what this feels like." I asked him if he meant dying. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window toward the trees. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. He said, "They told me." I felt a chill run through me.
"Who told you?" I asked. Grandpa smiled slightly, but it wasn't his usual smile. It looked uneasy. He said, "Old friends." I thought maybe he meant friends who had passed away. A lot of his war buddies had died over the years, but the way he said it didn't sound like that. Before I could ask anything else, he suddenly looked back at me and said something strange. "Danny, don't answer the phone Tuesday night." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He shook his head like he had already said too much. "Just don't answer it." I laughed nervously and told him he was starting to sound like one of those creepy stories online. He chuckled a little, but then he added one last thing. "If you do, it won't be me." I didn't know what to say after that. The rest of the visit felt off. We talked about normal things again, but I kept thinking about what he had said. When I left that evening, he walked me to the door like he always did. Right before I stepped outside, he grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. He looked me right in the eyes and said, "Remember the time. Tuesday, 9:47. Then he let go and closed the door. At the time, I told myself he was just being dramatic. Old people sometimes talk strangely about death. I figured maybe he had a doctor's appointment or something he wasn't telling us. I didn't think much about it after that, until Tuesday came, the day he said he would die. Most of the day was normal. I went to work like usual, but I kept checking the clock, not because I believed him, just because it was in my head. Around 6 p.m., my mom called me. She said Grandpa hadn't answered his phone all day. That wasn't normal for him. He usually answered on the first ring. She asked if I could stop by his house after work to check on him since I lived closest. I told her I would. By the time I finished work and drove over, it was already getting dark. The sky had that deep orange color right before sunset. When I pulled into Grandpa's driveway, I noticed something strange immediately. The lights in the house were on, and the TV was glowing through the window, but the house felt quiet. Too quiet. I walked up the steps and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. The door was unlocked. Grandpa almost never locked it. When I pushed it open, the smell of coffee hit me. The TV was still playing in the living room, and Grandpa was sitting in his chair, exactly where he always sat. At first I thought he was asleep, but something about the way he was sitting didn't look right. His head was tilted slightly, and he wasn't breathing. My chest tightened as I walked closer. "Grandpa?" No response. I stepped closer, and that's when I saw it. His eyes were half open, but he wasn't breathing. I called 911 immediately. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked him for several seconds, then one of them quietly shook his head. Heart attack. They said it looked like he passed quickly, peacefully. The paramedic asked me if I knew what time he had been last seen alive. I told them I wasn't sure. They looked at the clock on the wall. Then one of them checked his watch and said something that made my stomach drop. "Looks like he passed about 10 minutes ago." I glanced at the clock. The time read 9:57, and suddenly I remembered what Grandpa had told us. Tuesday, 9:47, exactly 10 minutes earlier. But the truly disturbing part of this story didn't happen until later that night, because when I finally got home around midnight, my phone showed something that made my blood run cold. A voicemail from my grandfather's phone number, and the timestamp said it was sent at 9:48. When we left off, the paramedics had just taken his body from the house. They estimated he died around 9:47 p.m., exactly the time he had been telling everyone for days. At that point, I was still trying to process everything. Losing someone is strange enough on its own, but when that person spends 2 weeks calmly telling everyone the exact moment they'll die, it makes things feel unreal. But what happened after I got home that night is what truly changed how I see the world. And honestly, I wish it hadn't. I got back to my apartment sometime around midnight. The whole drive home, I kept replaying the evening in my head, finding Grandpa in his chair, the paramedics arriving, my mom crying on the phone. It didn't feel real yet. My apartment was quiet when I walked in. I kicked off my boots, dropped my keys on the counter, and sat down on the couch. For a while, I just stared at the TV without turning it on. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was probably my mom or my sister checking in, but when I picked it up, I felt my stomach drop. It was a voicemail notification, and the sender was Grandpa's phone number. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. My first thought was simple. Maybe someone at the house had his phone. Maybe my mom had called accidentally while moving things around. That seemed logical enough. But then I noticed the timestamp. The voicemail had been left at 9:48 p.m., 1 minute after the time Grandpa said he would die. I felt this strange chill crawl up my back. Still, I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. Maybe he had called earlier and the voicemail just arrived late. Phones glitch sometimes. So I tapped the message. For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard static, the kind of faint crackling sound you sometimes hear when someone calls from a bad connection. I almost hung up right there. But then I heard his voice. Danny. My heart stopped. It was unmistakably Grandpa's voice, the same deep, slow voice I had heard my entire life. But something about it sounded different, distant, like he was speaking from far away. Danny, I told you not to answer the phone. My hands started shaking. I nearly dropped the phone. Behind his voice, there was a strange noise. At first, I thought it was wind, but the longer I listened, the more it sounded like whispers, very faint, like several people speaking at once from far away. Then Grandpa spoke again. His voice sounded strained, like someone struggling to breathe. If you hear this. There was a long pause. The whispers behind him seemed to grow louder. Then he finished the sentence. It means I didn't go alone. The voicemail ended. I sat there in complete silence. My entire body felt cold. I must have listened to that message at least 10 times, each time hoping I had imagined something. But the message was always the same voice, the same words, the same whispers in the background. After a few minutes, I tried calling the number back. It rang once, and then went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. Eventually, I stopped. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove back to Grandpa's house. Family members had started arriving to help clean the place and prepare for the funeral. My mom looked exhausted. At one point, I asked her if anyone had used Grandpa's phone the night before. She frowned. No, she said. Why? I hesitated. Then I told her about the voicemail. She looked uncomfortable. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. She said, the police took his phone with his belongings last night. They needed it to log with the rest of his personal items. I asked her what time they had taken it. She thought for a moment. Probably around 10. That meant the phone had already been taken by the time the voicemail was sent. I didn't say anything else. I didn't want to upset her. But the thought kept repeating in my mind. If the phone wasn't in the house anymore, then how did it call me? Later that afternoon, I went to the police station. I told them about the voicemail. At first, the officer looked like he thought I was just grieving, but he still checked the records. After a few minutes, he said something that made my blood run cold. According to the phone log, there were no outgoing calls from your grandfather's phone last night. None. Not at 9:48. Not at any time. I left the station feeling numb. Over the next few days, I tried convincing myself it had to be some kind of glitch. Maybe the voicemail had been recorded earlier. Maybe someone had cloned his number. Anything. But nothing made sense. 3 days later, we buried Grandpa. It was a quiet funeral, mostly family and a few old friends. One thing I noticed during the service still bothers me. Right before the casket was closed, my mom placed Grandpa's phone inside with him. She said he always kept it in his pocket, so it felt wrong to bury him without it. I remember watching the phone disappear inside the coffin. I remember the lid closing, and I remember telling myself that was the end of it. But I was wrong. About a week after the funeral, one night I was lying in bed when my phone suddenly lit up. I glanced at the screen, and my entire body went cold. It said, "Incoming call, Grandpa." For a few seconds I couldn't move. The phone kept ringing. I remembered what he had told me. Don't answer the phone. My finger hovered over the screen, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't answer. After about 10 seconds, the call stopped. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Slowly, I checked the call log. The timestamp read 9:48 p.m., exactly the time as the voicemail. I didn't sleep that night either. Over the next few weeks, it happened 3 more times, always at night, always from his number, always at 9:48 p.m. I never answered, but something else started happening, something worse, because every time the call came, I would get another voicemail, and each voicemail was slightly different. The first one just repeated what I had heard before, but the second one, his voice sounded weaker, like he was struggling, and the whispers behind him were louder. The third message, I swear I heard more voices, not just whispers, actual words. And the last voicemail I received, the one I got 3 nights ago, is the reason I'm telling this story. Because when I played it, Grandpa's voice sounded desperate, like he was trying to warn me. He said, "Danny, don't answer it." There was screaming in the background this time, real screaming. Then he said one final thing, something that hasn't left my mind since. He said, "They're learning how to use the phones." The message cut off after that. Since then, my phone hasn't rung again. But every night, right around 9:48 p.m., my phone screen flickers for a second, like someone is trying to call. And sometimes, just for a moment, I swear I hear the faint sound of whispers coming from the speaker, even when the phone isn't ringing. I haven't answered yet, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. Because if Grandpa was right about one thing, it's this: if I answer that call, it might not be him anymore.
If you love the slow burn of fear, the stories that creep under your skin, subscribe now. Don't fight the darkness. Let it follow you.